All right, we'll check back in with Jamie in just a little bit. We want to go back now to Massey Hall, where Neil Young is going to be beginning a Canadian tour dubbed the Honor Treaties. He's speaking right now.
To me, it's a basic matter of integrity on the part of Canada. Canada is trading integrity for money. That's what's happening under the current leadership in Canada, which is a very poor imitation of the George Bush administration in the United States, and is lagging behind on the world stage. It's an embarrassment to many Canadians. So as a Canadian, I felt like I had a chance to do something by bringing this together. I first visited the Fort Mac area a while ago and viewed the tar sands that are available for viewing from the ground. And what I saw was a devastating environmental catastrophe, which of course is a boom town. Now, you know, it's providing money for all kinds of people for the next few years, but it doesn't think about our grandchildren. It doesn't think about the future. We need to start thinking about the future is how I feel. I want to work towards the future. That's what I was there for when I went to study CO2 in Alberta, where every day in Alberta, even with the tar sands the way they are now, the amount of CO2 coming out of the tar sands industrial sites is equal to every car in Canada every day. It's like 2 cars on the road for every one. That's what's happening there. That's now not the way to end global warming. I read in the Globe and Mail this morning that Canada's got a little problem with mathematics, and that the children here are not learning very well. But Canada has an even bigger problem with science. It's a huge problem. Right at the top of the chain, in Ottawa, we have a huge problem with science and the understanding of it. Our future depends on science. Science is the roadmap. Science cannot be ignored as inconvenient. And that's what today's leaders are doing. That's why I'm here. Because behind this sad and incredibly tragic story of what Canada is doing to the First Nations people, Canada, the name Canada is based on a First Nations word. The name Ottawa, based on a First Nations word. Ontario, based on a First Nations word. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec. These are all First Nations words. That is where Canada came from. We are here. We made a deal with these people. We are breaking our promise. We are killing these people. The blood of these people will be on modern Canada's hands. And it will be as a result of not just a slow thing, but of a fast and horrific thing if this continues. There are many ways that this could happen. And believe me, these people are not going to sit back and let Canada, the modern Canada, roll over them. And they're not saying it, but they're feeling it. And you can't do this. Canada cannot just walk over everyone. So I have too much to say about this to say right now. And it's a little bit too late for me to be here to stop some of the things that have already happened. But nonetheless, I'm here, and these are my friends, and I hope that we can make a difference for our grandchildren, because that's why we're here, that's where I'm here. Because I want my grandchildren to grow up and look up and see a blue sky and have dreams that their grandchildren are going to do great things. And I don't see that today in Canada. I see a government in just completely out of control. Money is number one. Integrity isn't even on the map. So please get a grip and understand what is really happening, and try to talk to your neighbors, have people vote. Convince your First Nation friends to vote. Don't accept what you hear as being true, because it's not. Anything that you're hearing from the government about the tar sands is just marketing. It's not truth. take a second to really look at what you hear. That's what I can say. The rest of it's up to you. You have to make up your own minds. I can't tell you how to think. I don't want to tell you how to think. If you don't think of it yourself, it won't last. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just make a comment that one of the most common questions I'm asked by young people today is, how do I become an environmentalist? And I say environmentalism isn't a specialty or a discipline like plumbing or being a doctor. It's a way of seeing our place on the planet. And so we need musicians, and we need artists, and we need doctors and teachers and everyone to see the world that way. So I thank Neil for being here to bring a perspective. He, like all of us that care about the future, are ready to speak. And I want to also indicate that I am so moved. I haven't heard anyone here being against the economy or against development, but I'm so moved to hear the First Nations ask Canadians to live up to what we say. We sign treaties, we make agreements, and now all they're asking is, are you ready to live up to what you say? And I thank you for that. But also, these are some of the poorest people in Canada, and what they're saying is, folks, there are things more important than money, like the air, the water, and the other living organisms on the planet. So I thank you for raising that. And finally, Andrew, thank you. In a time when one of the ways of dealing with climate change seems to be, let's not listen to any of the science, let's shut them down and get rid of our libraries. We need this kind of information coming out for the public. So that's just a comment. Now I think Steve is going to indicate who we can start with. Could you identify who you are and what media outlet you're with?
Hi, Rudy Blair, 680 News. This question is for Neil. Neil, when did you first hear about this? And when you did hear about it, I mean, what were your thoughts? And also, if you could have an audience with the Prime Minister, what would you like to say to him?
Let's take the first question. Will you repeat the first question? The second one kind of blew my mind, so I'll go back to the first one.
The first question was, when did you first hear about this? And when you first heard about it, what were your thoughts?
Well, when I first heard about this, it was about halfway there. I was driving there in an electric car from San Francisco to northern Alberta, in an electric car with a generator charging batteries that was powered by biomass. And this car was a 6,500-pound vehicle. And we were making the point that you didn't need oil, that you didn't need fossil fuels, that there were other ways to get around. Now we're making a movie about CO2 and transportation. About halfway there, I saw a video of the chief talking. I said to my friend Dave, that's a strong man talking there that really believes what he's saying. What is going on up there? Then I started finding out what was going on. There were doctors saying that the cancer rate among the First Nations people was 30% greater than it was among anybody else, and it was a bunch of cancers that nobody had ever seen before in the area. Further studies revealed that those cancers were part of the petrochemical business, one of the offshoots of that. So I found that to be interesting. It wasn't the number one thing that I was going north for, but I kept hearing about it. So really, it's a terrible issue. It's a terrible problem. It's fraught with bad things that no one wants to think about, broken promises, integrity, Canadian pride. There's a lot of problems with this issue of how Canada has treated the First Nations people, and it's truly evident in the area of the tar sands. Although that's just a flashpoint now, it's apparent across the country. So I became very interested in it and decided to meet who I could and talk to them. So that's when I met the chief. And that's when we went to the homes and to the where the First Nations people were living, and I met them. But But while I was there, I also went to the tar sands, and I drove around the tar sands in my electric car, viewing it and experiencing this unbelievable smell and toxicity in my throat, and my eyes were burning. And that started 25 miles away from the tar sands when I was in Fort Mac, and got more intense. My son, who has cerebral palsy, has lung damage, and he was wearing a mask to keep the toxic things in the air out of his lungs and make it easy for him to have lungs after he left. And so we drove around there, and it was just a huge industrial site. It looked very big and very impressive, and extremely well organized. A lot of people were working, hard-working people who I respected. I still respect hard-working people. And that was one of 50 sites. The one we saw was the cleanest one. It's the best-looking one. It's the poster child. And it's one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. But there's a film that we show called Petropolis that we'll be showing between the sets tonight, and showing on the screen, and showing in the lobbies, and showing around. And we have a 12-minute version of it that is an aerial shot of the tar sands, which is one of the most, well, probably the most devastating thing that you will ever see. That this exists in Canada, the largest undertaking of its kind, or of any kind, on the planet, is right here in Canada. It's the greediest, most destructive, and disrespectful demonstration of something run amok that you could ever see. There's no way to describe it. So I described it as Hiroshima, which was basically pretty mellow compared to what's really going on up there. So I still stand by what I said about Fort Mac and about the way it looks. Not because the houses in Fort Mac look like Hiroshima, but because Fort Mac stands for 50 sites. The name Fort Mac stands for disease that these First Nations peoples are getting. The pollution, everything that's happening there. In the face of the challenge that the world faces, where we really need to turn around and look about the future for our grandchildren and develop new technologies. This is even uglier, because this country is going in the other direction. It is, what's the word? Hypocritical. Some of the things that are being said by the leaders of this country are pure hypocrisy. It's embarrassing as a Canadian to have to listen to some of this stuff. It's all marketing. It's all big money. This oil is all going to China. It's not for Canada. It's not for the United States. It's not ours. It belongs to the oil companies. And Canada's government is behind making this happen. It's truly a disaster to anyone with an environmental conscience, anyone who is thinking about their grandchildren, anyone who can see outside of a 3-month window of corporate profit has got to be appalled at what's going on. So that's too much for me to say to Prime Minister Harper, I think. But, you know, nonetheless, I don't think I'm going to get to see him anyway. But if he does want to see me, I'm ready to go see him. I would welcome the opportunity. We invited representatives of the Canadian government to be here. There are their chairs over there, and they respectfully declined to come. And, you know, there must be another side to this story. And
you didn't invite them to debate. You invited them to present.
Come and tell their side of the story. Come and say what's happening. I'm happy to hear that. I would love to hear that, David. I would love to hear why this is okay. Why it's okay to break treaties.
I've tried to see the Prime Minister 3 times, and he's rejected me, so...
Well, you got a bad reputation.
See?
All right, there he is, the man himself, rock music legend Neil Young. Standing alongside, I should mention, David Suzuki there. Neil Young is launching a Canadian tour that's starting tonight. It's called the Honor the Treaties Tour. He talked about the fact that he feels the Canadian government is putting money over integrity, and these concerts, 4 of them as a matter of fact, are going to be going toward helping an Aboriginal band in Alberta that is specifically fighting the expansion of the Athabasca oil sands. I believe after Toronto, he's going to be going on to Winnipeg, where he spent some time there, of course, in Regina and then Calgary. The event tonight is happening at Massey Hall, and we were just listening live to some comments there that Mr. Young was making to the media. It's now 1:50 and 2 degrees.